Hello and welcome to In the Cool of the Day. I am your host, Tia Young, and we have a very special show for you today. You know, we sometimes forget about the most valuable assets on this earth, our aging parents. And today we're going to talk about our precious aging seniors. Our special guests today are Mr. Stephen Holmes, Executive Director of the historical Culpepper Garden Senior Affordable Housing Community of Arlington, Virginia, and Mr. Lee Kaplowitz, Director of Development. Gentlemen, welcome to In the Cool of the Day.
Thank you, Tia.
We're so glad to have you today.
We appreciate the invitation.
Well, thank you. Let's just get started with, give us a little history lesson about the Culpepper Garden complex.
All right. Culpepper Garden opened in 1975. It was the vision of a nearby church, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington.
Okay.
And I take my hat off to them for having that vision and seeing it through. They are not as involved as they were in years past, but still have a role for us, most recently relative to fundraising, which Lee will probably talk about.
Yes.
But in 1975, they opened Culpepper Garden with 204 apartments for senior citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Their object was to accommodate people who retired on a fixed income and ensure that they could continue to live in Arlington County, which was their home in years past.
Wow.
So a very worthy goal on their behalf, and like I said, I take my hat off to them. In 1992, another 63 units were opened, and at this point with 200, what does that add up to? 267 units of independent living for seniors.
That's great.
Then in the year 2000, 63 more units were opened.
Growing.
This time around, though, they were assisted living units. And it turned out it was the first HUD-sponsored assisted living facility in the nation.
Right.
And so we continue to be proud of that legacy.
That is something to be proud of. Now, you mentioned assisted living and independent living. Can you just tell us what the difference is there?
Independent living is, as it says, independent. I don't want to sound facetious, but it is as simple as that. In many respects, though, the residents are not independent because they're getting assistance to age in place, as the term is, and they couldn't do that in many instances without assistance. Assisted living is literally the residents receive assistance from a nursing staff, assistance with activities of daily living. It could be as simple as being reminded to take their medication, or it could involve a bath, or help moving around to breakfast or whatever meal of the day it is.
Okay.
So depending upon their circumstances, they get assistance.
Right. That's 24-hour.
That's 24 hours, yes.
Service. Okay. Lee, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to talk about the name Culpepper Garden.
Okay.
Because as a fundraiser, that's always very challenging. First of all, there's a town in Virginia called Culpepper, so a lot of people think our nonprofit is in Culpepper, Virginia. And they also think we're a garden, and we're not. And how we got our name is Dr. Charles Culpepper sold his property to the movers and shakers who helped create Culpepper Garden, and they named it after him because he was a botanist. He worked for the Department of Agriculture.
Okay.
He was a scientist, and people who grew up in Arlington remember that Dr. Culpepper would raise flowers, and he would create hybrid flowers, and he would sell them to the kids or give them away to the kids. So this 5-acre property was Dr. Culpepper's property that he purchased in 1924 to raise his family. And then in the late 60s, And early 70s, they started talking about donating or selling this property so they can create Culpepper Garden, and that's how it has its name.
Right.
So for me as a fundraiser, it's a little challenging because it doesn't say in the title of what we are, what we do.
That's right.
It's Culpepper Garden.
Right. Well, you know, that is a historic, because I'm thinking that 1975 was the beginning, but it's not. It goes back as far as the 20s.
For him, yes.
For him, yeah.
But there was no senior citizen housing complex in Arlington in the late 60s. Okay. And the Unitarian Church members, with some local officials and Dr. Culpepper, said we should try to provide some housing for seniors here in Arlington, so that's how we got involved. He was a member of that Unitarian Church as well.
Well, in your minds, and I'd like to hear from both of you on this, why do you think Culpepper Garden is so critical or so important to the community in Arlington?
Well, first of all, there's not a lot of affordable housing.
That's for sure.
And Culpepper has the capacity, probably the largest capacity in Arlington of all the facilities that there are, and there are unfortunately not a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And as I noted earlier, it enables Arlingtonians who have lived there all their life to remain in Arlington instead of having to move out to less expensive areas. Right. To be able to live.
And this is an expensive area.
Yeah, it sure is. Yes.
It really is. Real estate is high. Tell us a little bit about who can benefit from the services of the seniors that reside there in terms of, you know, age. How old can you be? Can you be in your late 40s, or is there a particular age?
You have to be at least 62.
At least 62.
Or older,
okay,
to gain admittance. Mm-hmm. And as a HUD property, you have to meet the income requirements. You cannot, there are limits that you cannot go over.
Okay.
And with the risk of confusing our audience, I'll try to explain that Culpepper Garden is made up of 3 different facilities. We call them Culpepper 1, 2, and 3. Okay. If you are interested in moving into Culpepper 1, which is generally the entry point for individuals, you cannot make over roughly $46,000 a year. Okay. For Culpepper 2 and 3, you cannot make over, it's around $35,000 a year. Okay. Now, to zero in on that a little bit more, approximately 20% of our resident population, which totals around 340 individuals, plus or minus, well, I should say plus a few, because we do have a few couples living there. Right. Of that 20%, their income is at or below the poverty level. Wow. Overall, 80% of our residents have incomes at or about $20,000 a year. Now, when you compare that to Arlington County, the median family income is over $100,000. Right. So you can see it's a important population that we're taking care of there.
Well, you know, I have had the privilege to visit Culpepper Garden, and coming in, most of the times it's been early in the morning, and some of the people look like they're actually going to work. So do you have people that are still employed?
Yes, we have a few that are still employed, a few that are still driving.
Right, I saw that too.
And it's a pretty active population by and large. Mm-hmm. There are, what shall I call them, old-timers who will complain that there are too many people there with wheelchairs or walkers. Didn't used to be that mm-hmm. way. Mm-hmm. But that's part of aging in place, which is our goal for these people, is to enable them to age in place and stay in their own home.
Well, tell us a little bit about your staff and some of the activities that the seniors do.
Okay. There. First of all, we are most fortunate to have Arlington's largest senior center in our basement.
Really?
And if you were to walk into the entrance to the auditorium, you would immediately be amazed at the numbers of flyers touting an unbelievable variety of activities.
Give us some examples.
Well, there's an Elvis impersonator that comes around. There are choral groups. There are pets that come in for pet therapy.
There's yoga, there's dance, tap dancing, musical instruments that people are learning through the senior center.
So the senior center is different from the residential part. Does that mean that any other person outside of who lives there could join?
They could, yes. There's a small fee,
okay,
but it's very reasonable. And they would join the senior centers of Arlington. But it's a gold mine of activity. Now we put on a certain number of activities that are Culpepper Garden specific, but by and large, one could stay entertained all day long through the senior center if they wanted to.
Right, and I've got to tell the viewers that about a month ago I was there for karaoke day, and I have to tell you that Steve does a mean twist. That was so much fun to see the seniors get up and dance and sing, and it was just even the ones that were in wheelchairs. They were actually, moving the wheelchairs around, and it was something to really see. I thought that was really, really nice.
We have seen several residents who, prior to that, seemed lethargic. One could say near death, but it has brought them to life.
Right,
and it's amazing.
Right. That's a good thing.
And I'll have to get you back for telling them about me doing karaoke.
We have just a couple of minutes before the break, but maybe you could quickly tell us a bit about your board.
It is a nonprofit board of directors. Each individual serves out of interest and goodness of heart for the mission of Culpepper Garden. It is a wide variety of individuals, attorneys, people that have an interest in seniors, and we feel very fortunate to have the people supporting us in that way and providing the direction and oversight to the organization that this group does.
Sounds like a well-rounded board.
It is very well-rounded, and we are well served by them.
Right. Well, when we come back, we're going to get into fundraising, but for now, we are going to take a short station break, so don't touch that dial.
Don't touch that dial. In the cool of the day, we'll be right back.
Welcome back. You're watching In the Cool of the Day with our special guests from Culpepper Garden of Arlington, Steve Holmes and Lee Kaplowitz. Prior to the break, we were talking about all kinds of fun things that the seniors do and a little bit about the history. But now, I know that fundraising can be a problem sometimes, and I just wanted you to talk about the fundraising efforts that you have.
Thanks, Tia. Yes, most of our fundraising efforts are directed at the residents who reside in our assisted living facility. Because the cost of their custodial care, the assistance with daily activities of daily living, plus meals and rent, sometimes go beyond what a senior has in income. So there's a gap.
Yes.
And I have to fill that gap. And originally our donor base was made up of a lot of the members of the Unitarian Church and other neighbors who over time have aged, passed away, and just like every other nonprofit, it's always been a challenge to replenish them.
Right.
And there are so many good charities out there that we're competing against every other charity in Arlington, all that have a good cause and a good mission. And so it's tougher to come up with those donations than ever before. So we try to do appeals. We do 2 mailing appeals a year to our general population of donors, and then we do targeted appeals to maybe the family members and sponsors of some of our residents. We have a gala every year where we acknowledge some organizations and individuals who have performed in helping the elderly in Arlington County. We call it our Elder Service Award Gala, where we identify 3 entities who receive our awards, and that's our fundraising event. And we also apply for grants from foundations. Interestingly enough, 30 years ago, about 2% of all private foundations had a mission that had anything to do with the elderly. And now we fast forward, and with a growing baby boomer population, still 2% of the foundations have missions that have to do with the elderly. So it's still not recognized of the future need of older people in this country. So it's been quite a challenge. It's hard to break into the corporate world. Corporations are being approached by homeless organizations, people who need food, and elderly somehow get pushed to the back of the list.
What about the banks? I mean, it just seems like the I'm surprised to hear
Yes.
you say that. I thought the corporate effort would be greater.
True, and as I speak with people in the corporate world, they mention that internally, the amounts that they set aside for philanthropic giving has declined. Okay. So it's even tougher to get money from them more than ever. It's harder than ever. And they have to pick what organizations they want to give to. And very often, as we mentioned, seniors get the short shrift.
Yeah, that's right. Well, how could viewers, if we have viewers who would like to donate or to get in touch with you to talk about possibly some fundraising ideas, how would they do that?
The easiest way is to go onto our webpage, which is www.culpeppergarden, singular, and Culpepper is 2 P's, not like the city, so it's culpeppergarden.org, and then you'll find a tab that says donation, which will allow you to either click and give online using a credit card, or there's an address where someone can mail in a check to the development department. And all of the funds that we receive go to assist the people in our assisted living facility, Culpepper Garden 3, where the average age is 88.
Lee, you mentioned earlier that the average age is about 88. What is the age of the oldest person that lives there?
Well, in independent living, we have a woman who is 105 years old, Helen. She was a retired nurse. She retired from nursing at age 96. Matter of fact, we did a little spread on her in the Washington Post, and the Sun Gazette in Arlington did a little feature on her.
Wow, 105, and she's active?
She's active, she's independent. She sometimes uses a walker, but chooses not to most of the time, and her sense of humor is very cutting.
Wow.
Very cutting.
That's exciting. I'd like to meet her.
I think her favorite line, I must share with you, is that when people ask her, how do you account for being 105, she goes, this lassie kept track of her chassis.
Well, actually, I've been working with Dee.
Yes.
And it looks like she's going to come and play our Steinway piano for us on the 12th of December, along with several other women. And they're going to go back down memory lane and sing and dance and do all kinds of things for our variety show. So we're looking forward to that.
Are you going to have Steve sing again?
I'm thinking about having him come out and do
the twist.
cha-cha twist. I'll have him come out and do the twist.
If Lee will join me.
Now, what about volunteers? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yes.
What do you have enough volunteers, or how do you go about getting them?
That's a good question, Tia. For volunteers, we always are looking for volunteers to visit our residents of our assisted living facility, Culpepper Garden 3. There is a process, because we have to be careful about who we're letting into the facility and who we're letting into. The seniors might be letting into their units. So there is a process, but there's always a need for volunteers to do tasks sometimes as simple as just socialize with some of our residents who don't have anybody visiting them, or help them with a meal, or just accompany them outside in the garden, sit outside and talk about flowers, or talk about where they visited. So there's always a need for volunteers.
Right. Well, you know, I'm affiliated with a nonprofit organization, and they normally get clothing from like Guest stores and some of the stores in the area. And sometimes the clothing need like a little mending or darning. And I'm just wondering, is that something that the seniors, because most of the ladies, you know, they know how to sew and knit and things like that. Is that something that the seniors could work on? Some of the women there?
Well, I think we have a rule about taking things in from the outside. We have to be,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that would.
So yeah, people sometimes call me up and say, Lee, I have this great television that we'd like to donate, or a piece of furniture, and we have to decline.
Okay,
it's just one of our
now
rules.
they would darn it, and then it would come out
back.
and give it back to some of the kids. Because Guests, that's the young kids, that's the teenagers.
I understand now. Okay,
Yeah.
I believe there might be some people who have the ability to darn.
Right.
And fix garments and return them to the owners.
Right.
We have an activities and volunteer coordinator. Her name is Shelley Quick, and on our website, the same website I mentioned earlier, has a tab about volunteering, and you can go there and you can write an email to Shelley and ask her what she thinks about that idea and any other ideas that people have about volunteerism.
Right. Well, Steve, you mentioned earlier that you have the independent project that goes on, and then you have the ones who can no longer independently live. Do you make that decision when you determine that somebody is no longer able to live by themselves?
Fortunately not.
Okay, how does that process work?
Well, there is not really a formal process.
Oh,
It's on an individual by individual basis. And by and large, some of the folks anticipate the aging process and they make plans in advance
right.
of the effects of aging. Others avoid that or neglect it altogether, and all too often are found in need of care and service beyond that which they can receive in our independent living section.
Right.
I would not describe myself any differently. I would cling to an independent existence for as long as I could.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of times we get some very difficult situations because either the individual did not make plans for transitioning, or they don't want to transition no matter what. And in some cases, that decision is made for them when, for one reason or another, they go to the hospital via emergency vehicle, and it's determined in the hospital that they can no longer reside by themselves in an independent setting.
Right. Well, I'm about to say something that is not all that comfortable to say because I'm sometimes guilty of it. I'm very blessed to have my mother, who is 90 years old, that is still, living with us, and she's very independent. But I sometimes think that adult children and the grandkids and the great-grandkids can be insensitive at times to the needs of the seniors. And of course, after you don't seem to have the patience that you need to have, you feel terrible. You just feel like, I should just go out and just shoot myself. But is there any help for children that are still living and integrating with elderly parents? Because I was in the store once and I actually heard a woman just scream at her mother, and I was quick to judge. I've never screamed at my mom, but there have been times that I've been really irritated and just really frustrated, and I feel horrible about it. And I just wonder, are there, outreaches that can kind of help?
None come immediately to mind by name, but
Yeah.
I know there are ones that are out there.
Well, do your seniors, when you talk to them, do they sometimes feel like they are have been neglected or
Abused.
dismissed, even dismissed by
Yes,
children?
I'm sure. I'm sure. One of the difficult realities for us is that a lot of our residents do not have family, and it makes the challenge.
Zero, nobody?
Nobody.
So they're just there by themselves?
Yes, so it makes our task even more difficult.
Yeah.
We are very fortunate, blessed may be the better word, to have a partnership with Arlington County.
Oh, that's good.
Arlington County provides us with significant financial support in the course of a year, which gets the publicity. What does not get the publicity are the human resources that are brought to bear on our resident population. I like to say that if you sat or stood in our lobby for 5 minutes and there were 10 people that passed by you, at least 2 or 3 would be caregivers of some kind there to take care of our residents. They could be a nurse who's there to take a blood pressure, a mental health worker, a aide who's there for an extended time.
Right.
But we could not do it alone without this partnership that we have with Arlington County. In fact, the state gave us an award several years ago, a partnership award
For that, that's great.
for our affiliation together and the mission that we're accomplishing together.
Right, that's great. We're just about out of time, but Lee, do you have any parting words?
I just want to say that You know, the need to provide affordable housing for seniors is growing as the population grows, and we have a 2.5-year waiting list to get in. We could build a building tomorrow and fill it in a day.
In a day.
In a
Isn't
day.
that something? That's what we need to do. We need to get more.
Okay.
More rooms there. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time. I know it's busy and it was hectic getting away and fighting the traffic to get here, but I thank you so much. And I want to thank the viewing audience for sharing this last half hour with us here on In the Cool of the Day. You know, when I was a young girl and sometimes impatient with my great-grandmother, my grandmother, Little Mama as we would call her, she would tell me, if you live long enough, you will one day realize that you are old. We all need to pause just for a moment and think about how we treat our aging families, our friends, and even strangers. If you live long enough, you too will grow old. To grow old is wisdom and honor. Have a wonderful week, and remember to be at peace with yourself and with everyone else. Bye-bye.